Is the Minister of Basic Education going to last her full term of office? That's a question that I think is becoming pertinent and relevant and is worth considering. On Friday, when the president was signing the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, the BELA bill, the Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Gwarube, did not attend this signing. She issued a statement. This is what she said. I have taken note of President Cyril Ramaphosa's anticipated signing of the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill. I have always and remain opposed to the bill in its current form and have requested the President to refer it back to Parliament for reconsideration in terms of Section 79 of the Constitution. I have also provided input on why this should be done. To this end, I have raised the following issues. The constitutionality of provisions on the implementation of admissions and language policies determined by the governing bodies of public schools, and the need for a phased approach to implementing Grade R as a compulsory and permanent feature of the basic education system based on the capacity of provincial education departments, public schools, and early childhood development centers to offer access to Grade R and to all learners who require it. Parliament must be allowed to fix what is currently wrong with the bill so that millions of learners across the country can access and receive quality education for a better South Africa. In the context of a government of national unity, it is essential that compromises reflect the people's will. That is why I have been engaged with the President on this matter. We must consider the objections to the bill and ensure that it is rectified to avoid protracted and costly legal action. I have thus written to the President and notified him that, in the present circumstance, I cannot attend today's signing ceremony until concerns regarding the bill are rectified. I remain ready to serve South Africa and to ensure that millions of learners across the country can access quality education. So that was her statement. It was a form of protest. It was a form of articulating their concerns. We now know, and I did a video on this, that the president has paused the implementation of 2 clauses to allow for a 3-month negotiation period between himself and the parties that oppose those particular sections. However, a large part of the bill is going to be implemented. Some of the concerns which exist are not even about Grade R or admissions policies, right? Some of the concerns were about school discipline. How do you implement school discipline? Some of the questions are still outstanding in that respect. But be that as it may, there have now been calls for the Minister of Education to resign by the South African Democratic Teachers Union, Sadtu. And this is what they said.
Sadtu is calling for the resignation of Basic Education Minister Siviwe Gwarube. This after she boycotted the signing of the BELA bill. Now, Gwarube says she cannot attend the signing ceremony until concerns regarding the bill are rectified. But the South African Democratic Teachers Union says it's either she comes to the party or resigns.
That's very unacceptable to have the Minister of Basic Education not attending the BELA bill when in actual fact has been part of the planning team to ensure that we are here today for the signing. And therefore it vindicates what I have said, that the DA will run a separate parliament, a separate cabinet, and people didn't believe me. This is the beginning, where the minister will then be instructed by Helen Zille not to be part of this particular signing, because Helen Zille is another pseudo-president of our country, and it's unacceptable. And then we want the president to take an action.
But what does that say about the start of the BELA bill, the implementation thereof, and how Sadtu, as a union with thousands of members, how you are going to approach the implementation with the minister currently at the helm?
The court is in the minister actually the ball is in the minister's court. She has to decide and make the work of the president very easy by tendering her resignation, because she will not be able to operate in an environment where she has got two bosses, one being Zelensky and the other one being Cyril Ramaphosa, because the act is now the act of parliament and therefore it has to be implemented. So our approach is very simple, is that the ball is in your court, minister. You have to either decide to implement or you quit.
So the issues that can be identified from the events of Friday are that it does seem as if the minister had an act of insubordination, and there could be a concern that is raised to say, will she be an unwilling implementer of this particular policy? And if indeed she is going to not subordinate to her superiors, in this instance, the president, is that something that is sanctionable in a professional environment? In an office, if your CEO tells you to do something and you say, no, I'm not going to do it, or a CEO tells you to attend a meeting and you say, I'm not going to attend because I disagree, that's not going to work, because one, you are paid to execute the will of your particular principal, and you are in that particular administration with an understanding that you are not the boss. The boss is actually the CEO. The boss is your line supervisor. The boss is, the president. The president gets to set the agenda. The legislation gives you a mandate in and of itself. The policy comes from, or the policy directives and the priorities come from your principal. So the DA has said, listen, we are in a coalition and we're not just going to be told what to do. The ANC didn't win the election. We have to work together. They're correct to a degree, right? To say your capacity to exercise authority requires our deposits, our voter deposits to do so. So yes, you are in charge, but it's not a unilateral exercise of power. You must share power. You must negotiate that power. You must talk to us. So in as much as there is an argument around her having acted, in a form of insubordination, my view is that it was legitimate protest. My view as well is that the DA had to do something to show that, listen, we have real concerns, and this gesture, which is what I think it was appropriate. The minister has said she'll implement the policy. In respect to enthusiasm to implement the policy, I think there are valid concerns. When you have somebody who's basically in charge of a department not willing to execute your vision as the boss, that vision may not find itself being expressed very well, because the person who is the line manager to oversee its implementation, in part, is the minister. I mean, the minister is the head. The deputy minister, I guess, can keep the agenda going, and if she's also heavily influential, she can keep the agenda going. But there is a question, when Andre de Ruyter was the CEO of Eskom, he had a particular vision. His vision was that IPPs are the future and that there mustn't really be a lot of focus on repairs, maintenance of the coal power stations. He was like, let's go to the future. Let's embrace it. It is what it is. As a result of that approach, there was more load shedding because he was ignoring certain things that he needed to do. When he left and other people came in, they had an appreciation that, look, the future is not here. We have to work with what we have, and we have to also fix the issues of maintenance, logistics, whatever needs to be fixed in order for there to be reduced load shedding. This is what they did. And now, there is continuous power in most parts of South Africa, although that comes with a caveat because there is still load reduction in the townships and other areas, and that's not discussed as much, and it should be, because we can't create a perception that there's zero load shedding when other areas still get power cuts quite frequently as a result of load management, load reduction, whatever you want to call it. It's still a form of load shedding. Be that as it may, the point that I'm making is that, it is actually something that people should raise as a concern, even if you say, I'm going to implement it. But if you implement something enthusiastically, energetically versus dragging your feet, there's a difference, and there's a difference in outcomes there. So it's a fair question. And I think that it's now clear that the teachers' union has taken a view to be antagonistic to the minister. And this in and of itself is something that could be a bigger issue outside of the principle of whether or not she will implement the BELA bill. There are other things in the past which the government tried to implement which were important for measuring the quality of teaching, one of which was the annual national assessments. Angie Musheka tried to implement those. They were done for a few years and they revealed quite atrocious performances in the schools. And then they were scrapped because the unions complained about them. At this particular union, in fact, at this particular point, if the union now says, we are antagonistic to you, when we see you, we are like this, that becomes a real challenge for the minister, and it may affect her capacity to execute her own agenda, and then becomes a relevant question about her longevity in that office. There's a second issue, and I think this is even bigger than the non-attendance of the signing of the BELA bill, right? The second issue that I think makes her a target within the department and from those who do business with the department is that the minister blocked. First, she suspended anything, but now she's blocked a 10 billion rand tender for a nationwide monopolized school nutrition tender. She's blocked it. 10 billion rands. That's a lot of money. There were people who were thinking about which slay queens they are now going to make famous, which makeup artists are now going to become famous because they get that 10 billion rand tender. Whenever somebody gets a massive tender like this, slay queens become famous. Nightclubs become famous. You'll hear of another nightclub, not Konka, maybe Bonka. You hear that now there's Bonka and these tenderpreneurs are at Bonka and it's going bonkers. She blocked that tender. It's blocked. Here's what she said.
Plans were afoot to modernize the strategy around school nutrition and to have a central procuring agency or managing agency. The concerns then I raised was that I'm concerned about entrusting one centralized agency to manage even the procuring. It's important to differentiate that it's not necessarily the distribution that will be centralized, but it's the procurement. And of course, setting the direction and policy direction of the department is my domain. And so I asked the process to be halted while I get more information. And as more information is resurfacing, I have decided to cancel that tender up until such a time that we as a department, we sit down and we look at perhaps how do we capacitate provinces to deal with school nutrition in a better way, in a more streamlined way, in a way that makes sure that the food is of quality, makes sure that the food arrives on time, makes sure that the food handlers are paid, all of these things. It's a hugely intricate and complex undertaking. But I could not, without being convinced of the efficacy of that strategy, simply agree to that kind of big, large item, budget aligned item, and also knowing that there's 9.7 million kids who look to us for that.
4 things that I want to say about this tender. I think that the minister is right to block this tender based on concerns about logistics, concerns about implementation, concerns about the scale of this particular operation. Trying to feed 9.7 million kids with one company handling all of the operation across 22,000 schools. That is a very complex operation that I don't think many organizations can execute effectively. She's right to be concerned that kids may get poor quality food. They may get rotten food. We've heard stories about these kind of things happening, or they may not get food at all. And that defeats the whole purpose of this kind of a thing. To be honest with you, there's only one entity that I think can feed this number of people consistently and has the logistical discipline to do this, and it's the military. The military can feed everyone in these schools every day and can cheapen the cost of feeding these kids, because these tenders actually are causing a lot of problems downstream. We actually just need the military, because the army feeds people all the time. They feed their own people while they're on barracks, etc., etc. They have the expertise, they have the chefs, They have the logistical training. They know how to do these kind of drills because that's basically what they need to do all the time, right? Feed the troops, then the troops go do their thing. So, so I think that's something that should be looked into. Having the military involved in providing the school nutrition programs, and perhaps at a later stage having that become its own arm of the Department of Education as opposed to be done through all of the suppliers. I don't know why it's not done by government in any case. But as things stand, we've seen even in KwaZulu-Natal, there was a big issue with school nutrition tenders, corruption associated with school nutrition tenders. She's correct to do this. Second thing I want to say is that there were concerns at the time that it was allocated, right, about this particular tender. And I think those concerns were legitimate. The other concerns that were raised were around the timing, because this tender was kind of like processed in a rush job after the election, during the negotiation for the coalitions. So it seems as if they were trying to get it in before everything got crystallized. And I think she was right to say, whoop, let's pause, let's take time, let's look at everything, let's connect our dots. What is it? Dot our I's and cross our T's and make sure everything is in order. She's determined now that things are not in order. And I think this is legitimate. I think she's fair to do this. I think it was a good decision. Let them start again. Number 3, I think this decision has put her in the crosshairs of the people who stood to benefit. You know, there are slave queens who were promised, hey, once my tender comes in, hey, I'm going to take you to Dubai. Then you're going to go to Turkey. Then you're going to look like a turkey. Every year I'm going to turkeyize you. There were slave queens waiting for this. Now people are explaining, hey, I want a baby. I cannot take you to Turkey and make you a turkey anymore because, you know, my turkey didn't come in at FNB. This has put her in the crosshairs. There were people who were going to dealerships looking at Land Cruisers, you know, saying, hey, soon and very soon, we are going to drive the cruiser. Soon and very soon, we are going to drive the cruiser. No more Mercedes-Benz. We are going to drive the cruiser. Do you understand that she has dropped the blesser inflation rate by blocking this 10 billion tender? It's good that she did it. But the fact that she did it has created enemies for her. Enemies for her who she may not know, but who could collapse her. Right? And I think this poses a risk to her in that portfolio. The last thing that I'm worried about, my 4th point, is I'm actually, and this is broader than just the minister, this is about corruption reporting, corruption journalism, investigative reporting. I'm still worried why this company that stood to benefit from this monopolization of the school nutrition program has not been mentioned by name. And the individuals who stood to benefit from the deal have not been exposed. Tell us, who was going to get the tender? What is the name of the company? Who are the directors? Who are the politicians involved in that thing? And this is not only on the minister, although I think the minister has certain protections. She should tell us. I think also the media has not done due diligence in this thing. We have Amapungani, we've got Daily Maverick, News 24. All of these people say that they've got investigative journalists. Again, this thing, man. Chuna Daideng, we want to find out who stood to benefit from this tender. Do your work. You cannot only just tell us things that concern Julius Malema, Floyd Shivambu, Jacob Zuma, Zwelim Kize, etc. Be consistent. Be consistent. I think it's important for transparency that this company be mentioned, that the process be clarified, that they be interviewed, those leaders in those companies. Because we'll hear about construction mafia, that cartel, this thing. This is an example. Why ningasitsheli? Tell us. Tell us who did it. We need to understand which people, which companies are involved in allegedly corrupt dealings so that we can also check, are they donating to political parties? What are their political movements? Is this part of their exercise of financial power? Is this part of the exercise of the corruption that everyone says and admits is a problem? We need to know. I think it's important to know. But I think in and of itself, this whole decision, this 10 billion rand decision, it's a lot of money. It's not just Slay Queens who are angry. It's not just car dealerships. There are individuals who are viciously annoyed by what she has done, and she has made some enemies, I think, in that respect. When you take these two things together, three things, the question of insubordination, the criticism from the union, the blocking of this particular tender, I think we have to ask ourselves, really, is the minister going to last in this portfolio position? What do you guys think? Let's have a conversation till the next one.